Well, good morning. Here it is already Tuesday. Hope you're having a good week so far. Uh, it's been a long one for me already. Uh, Today, I want us to talk about this guy I ran into over on Rob Skiba's channel. Uh, his name is Jon Linus, and he leaves these immensely long comments, which are obviously copy paste kind of things. And one of the things he left was this long set of claims that he says proves the flat earth. Unfortunately, there are 102 of those. Uh, but I really wanted to make a rebuttal for that because of their comments and because a lot of them were brand new kinds of information. So I thought it would be fun. Some of them are so ridiculous you'll laugh. I promise. Uh, so here we go, guys. Uh, so first of all, of course, lack of physically measurable curvature. The first thing I tell everybody all the time, you have to remember that the Earth is immense. I don't seem to understand why uh, flat earthers can't understand that the Earth is immense. You can't look at the horizon and say, oh, look, it's curved. Uh, so that good old flat Earth equation, everybody knows by heart, 8 inches per mile squared, says if you look 1 mile in the distance, you will see an 8-inch drop. Okay? So just imagine, go out on your porch and look a mile away and see if you can tell 8 inches. Okay? Go out to the beach. Look a mile away and see if you can see an 8-inch drop. Uh, so the second thing, good old Jeranism measured the curvature exactly as he predicted to the inch. He measured it. Uh, his comment was interesting. You can look that up if you want. It's on the Beyond the Curve movie. Another flat Earth fail. There's a link where they went to the Salton Sea to try to measure the curve, and sure enough, they came up with the exact number that the 8 inches per mile squared says that they would get. Uh, they asked Mark Sargent. He didn't even bother to look through the telescope. He just kind of stood around watching what they were doing. When they asked him about it, he just said refraction. Immediately, he didn't even think about it. They asked another girl about it that had driven all the way out there. This is like way out, you know, outside the city. And she said, I didn't see the experiment. Uh, just amazing that you would drive that far out in the middle of nowhere and then not even watch the experiment. Uh, the next thing, objects being seen past the curve, calculations all over the world. First of all, let me say it's not calculations, it's pictures, it's photos. next page. Mass, attracting mass is not able to be recreated. Again, the Cavendish experiment is performed continually, repeated year after year by first-year college students successfully. I don't know why you think it's not been recreated, because it's every year. Gravity is still a theory, and oh my God, dude, you know this one. The effects of gravity are what we use every day. It's the effects of gravity. The 9.86 miles per second squared that things drop, you can measure that. It has been measured. It is constantly measured. And if you want to look at the rest of my channel, you can find many videos where I explain how gravity works. I've even measured the big G, not the little g. So you can go and see those if you want, which I'm sure flat earthers won't do. The other thing I left out here is that, sure, gravity itself is still kind of a theory, but this is theoretical physicists that are trying to combine the four fundamental forces, which include gravity, into one theory that can explain how space and time are curved. This is a theory they're still working on, but it doesn't negate the fact that we still use the effects of gravity. Those experiments you see with the ball bending that surface or whatever it is, those are just simple experiments trying to explain what scientists see. They're not true. It's not the way it looks. It's just an experiment to show you what a very, very complicated scientific theory looks like. The next one, lack of detectable spin. I think all I could say here, and we could just quit, is Bob Nodal measured the exact motion of the Earth exactly the way Eratosthenes predicted it. He did this experiment 3 times, and his statement was, we measured a 15-degree spin. And in the next video, or the next scene of that movie, he was whispering to his friend, we can't let this get out, it'll be really bad for us. The next one is Foucault pendulum. The first thing I wanted to say is there's a tiny motor that gives a little push to the pendulum just to overcome friction so that it'll keep swinging. It's not powerful enough to affect the pendulum, it just keeps it swinging. But this pendulum is able to predict its exact latitude down to the second, at wherever it's located on the globe, even at the South Pole. And here's a link you can look at the South Pole, where they only get a 90-degree swing. The next one is the impossibility of flight on a spinning ball. And again, it amazes me how flat earthers can pick at the smallest little thing. An airplane makes continual adjustments. They don't just lock the wheel and sit back and wait till they get to where they're going. They have a gyroscope that measures the rotation of the Earth. They have to have it. Their speed is measured by comparison to wind speed, and altitude is measured by the distance from the surface of the Earth. So, if you're going over a mountain, they know that the altitude has increased. So these measurements are constant. They're every air flight. You can also find out that flights that go from west to east are generally faster than the flights that go from east to west. So don't tell me that there's no possibility of flight on a spinning ball. The lack of north to south circumnavigation. Here are 4 links, 4 different things where they've had a pole-to-pole circumnavigation. So again, this is a moot point. The lack of ability to track planes over southern oceans. Here's another link where they use satellite tracking. Lack of flights over Antarctica. Here's a bunch of links. There is, it does say that commercial flights don't fly over Antarctica, and there's a link that explains why they don't fly over Antarctica. It's a very dangerous flight. It's a very long flight with no possibility to land or refuel, and you're talking about landing in a spot that's like 90 degrees below zero. But there are flights to Antarctica. There's a link for that. And yes, I know a flight to Antarctica is different than over Antarctica. However, these common flights would necessarily see an ice wall hundreds of feet high, and they would see a dome as they approached the surface of the Earth, and they would see military that guard the stinking wall, which is never seen, it's never reported, it's never been photographed. Flat earthers always ask for why don't we have real photos from space of the Earth? But let me ask you, why don't we have real pictures of the ice wall and the military that guard that ice wall? Here are some skiers that also crossed Antarctica from coast to coast. And then there's an article about the first woman to cross Antarctica. You can't say that Antarctica is not a continent and it's not there because people have been there. The next one I've heard, and I've heard this on many comments, and it's shown to flat earthers all the time, military is not included in the Antarctic Treaty. That wasn't the purpose of the Antarctic Treaty. They're not trying to keep people away, except that it's so dangerous to be there. They would certainly block me from going there because I can barely walk out my front door without falling down. So, you know, the temperature is, you know, like I said, it can get as low as 90, 100 degrees below zero. Um, it's all snow. There's no place where you can stop and you know, get more supplies. There's no real place to camp. And yes, they try to prevent you from just taking off unless you have proof that you're capable of handling that. So anyway, here's a little bit of the text of the Antarctic Treaty. This I copied. You can see the link there. It was from the U.S. State Department, so this is an official document. Antarctica shall be used for peaceful purposes only. There shall be prohibited, I don't know what that word is, any measures of a military nature, such as establishment of military bases and fortifications. So it's prohibited to have military on Antarctica, as well as testing of any type of weapons. You can't go down there and blow up nuclear warheads or whatever. The present treaty shall not prevent the use of military personnel or equipment if it's used for scientific research or peaceful purposes. Article 2 says freedom of scientific investigation in Antarctica and cooperation toward that end as applied during the International Geophysical Year shall continue subject to the provisions of the present treaty. So there are many research operations down there. The previous link I had with the Foucault pendulum is one of those, and there are scientists down there doing research. The next one, Operation High Jump, and I looked this up. I think you're talking about a plane that crashed into the supposed dome. Here's a quote from that I got. It says, on December 30th, 1946, aviation radio men Wendell Henderson, Frederick Williams, and Ensign Maxwell Lopez were killed when their airplane crashed during a blizzard. The surviving 6 members were rescued 13 days later, including aviation radio men, and it lists some more people. And there was a plaque honoring the 3 killed crewmen, later erected at the McMurdo Station in honor of the killed airman Maxwell A. Lopez. So there were 6 survivors of this accident. So you would think 6 people that were on the plane would have a story about we crashed into a dome. But they don't. They didn't have that story. In 2004, there was an attempt to find the plane. They sent a plane out to look for it. They were unsuccessful and returned. But they also had no mention of any dome. The next one that flat earthers always complain about, Operation Fishbowl. Again, I assume you're referring to the operation where the military was trying to blow up the dome. Again, this just seems so ridiculous to me. First of all, if they knew that there was a dome and that there were waters above, isn't that suicide or genocide or something to blow up the dome. It's ridiculous. Uh, Secondly, uh, if you look at this that link right there, uh, it explains the operation. The first missile failed. The second missile went to 9 kilometers, between 9 and 10. Uh, so if they're trying to hit the dome, that means your dome is, roughly 9 to 10 kilometers high. The third one went to 1,100 kilometers, which is 680 miles. Once again, 680 miles is not where I've been told that your dome is. So here's some more information that I got about Operation Fishbowl. The highest, again, the high altitude rockets were 30 to 80 kilometers. There was a space rocket that went up, which I guess is the 680 mile one. And maximum yield is 1.4 megatons of TNT. The next one, there was leaked footage of astronauts faking a spherical Earth. I found no references to this in Google. There were no flat Earth references. There were no globe references. I saw none anywhere. So I leave it to you, Jon Linus, to show me some proof that there is any of this footage. I'm kind of curious, if they're faking a spherical Earth and leaking that, why wasn't it a nice picture of flat Earth? The next one, the space shuttle uses a rocket engine to land when it should be gliding. Well, hallelujah, you finally got one right. I'm just shocked that you got one right. The space shuttle, in fact, glides. It circumnavigates the Earth at least once. It does some maneuvers to try to slow itself down, but it doesn't use the rocket engines. There's no fuel. Even if it did, the rocket engine points in reverse. So how is that going to slow things down if the rocket engine is behind them, pushing them faster? So as you have surely seen, it enters the atmosphere. It uses the heat shield to slow it. And I'm 100% sure of this. I've seen the space shuttle. You can look and you can find videos of it landing, and there is no rocket. And again, there's a link. I just have a few more, so hang in. The next one, Neil Armstrong's speech. Neil Armstrong made a speech where at the very end he said, "There are great ideas undiscovered. There are breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of the truth's protective layers." That's all he said. No one, I repeat, no one, least of all Mr. Linus, can know for sure what Neil Armstrong was talking about. You can't read his mind and say, "Oh, that's what he meant." At a minimum, in my opinion, he's saying that there are great discoveries in science if we can accept the truth. That, like this document, is what prevents us. Uh, flat earthers, and not only flat earthers, but Congress, other people, uh, they doubt what can be accomplished, and that prevents us from making these new discoveries. The next one, astronauts cannot keep their story straight about whether they see stars in space. Another just totally ridiculous statement. So go into the city at night, any city, Dallas, New York, London, wherever you want to go, and look at the sky. Go ahead, look up at the sky. Do you see stars? I seriously doubt you see very many, if any. And it's because there's too much light pollution. There's too much light around you. Okay, so now the second part of your little experiment here, go out to a very dark field at night, out into a pasture or a open field where it's dark. Look at the sky. Now you see billions of stars. You see the Milky Way. It's not hidden. It's not. You're not prevented from seeing it. I don't know any other way to say it. And it's the same thing with the astronauts. If they're flying around the Earth or the Moon, or they're standing on the Moon, they're in daylight. And so they're surrounded by light. You can see in the pictures, it's not dark. And they're not going to see stars if there's light coming from the Earth or the Moon. So I realize that, there are astronauts that saying that they didn't see any stars or that they did see stars, but I think there's a very good explanation for that. And the last one I have today, we went to the moon 50 years ago on calculator tech, but we haven't been back. Yep, you're right. We haven't gone back. There are lots of us that are sad that we haven't gone back. Many of you don't even remember the moon landings that we had in the 60s and 70s. And yes, it was kind of calculator tech. I have seen and worked on the computer that they used on board, so I know, they're very primitive technology. But I can assure you, in the late 70s, it was Congress that decided we had learned all we could from the moon. It wasn't NASA, it was Congress. NASA's budget was cut from 4% of the federal budget to 0.4%. So let's think about that. You make $1,000 a month, and then your boss comes in and cuts your pay, your salary, to $100 a month. You would have to make changes in your budget. You'd have to cut things out and not do things. Well, NASA's had to do the same thing. You just have to understand how these things work. It costs money to do these things. And if Congress is going to say you don't get no money, then they can't do it anymore. So we'll talk more about that on another one of your items. I think I've covered enough for today. So you guys need to realize there are at least 80 more of these. I'll try to get them all done so we can move on to other topics. I wanted to cover these because they're mostly new things that I haven't seen videos about. So I hope you can see how crazy some of these statements are, and the coming up ones are even more just plain silly. So look forward to what's coming, and I'll see you on Friday.